Alright, good morning you guys. So let's finish up chapter 3. If you're in the big books, we're on page 40. If you're in the small books, we're right after that break that happened again where we left off last time. It starts with everyone has a moment in history. So, it says, everyone has a moment in history which belongs particularly to him. It is the moment when his emotions achieve their most powerful sway over him. And afterward, when you say to this person, the world today, or life, or reality, he will assume that you mean this moment, even if it is 50 years past. The world, through his unleashed emotions, imprinted itself upon him, and he carries the stamp of that passing moment forever. That's a little bit of poetry in our prose, you all. In other words, it's a little bit of big idea, big concept in our regular story. You all as kids probably didn't mean too much for you right now, unless it's a bad moment, unfortunately. But as you get older, you'll look back at some times in your life where it's like this. There's some really important, pivotal moments in your life that you kind of always flash back to. That's why adults, like me, your parents' age, stuff like that, when we talk about stuff, and we talk about the 1980s or 1990s like it wasn't that long ago, and then we're like, oh no, wait, that was actually a long time ago now, because it's so stuck in your brain. For me, this moment, 4 years is a moment in history, was the war. The war was and is reality for me. I still instinctively live and think in its atmosphere. These are some of the characteristics. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is the President of the United States, and he always has been. The other two eternal world leaders are Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin. America is not, never has been, and never will be what the songs and poem call it, a land of plenty. Nylon, meat, gasoline, and steel are rare. There are too many jobs and not enough workers. Money is very easy to earn, but rather hard to spend, because there isn't very much to buy. Trains are always late and always crowded with servicemen. Servicemen means soldiers, you all, in the uniforms. The war will always be fought very far from America, and it will never end. Nothing in America stands still for very long, including the people who are always either leaving or on leave. People in America cry often. 16 is the key and crucial and natural age for a human being to be, and other people of all other ages are arranged in an orderly manner ahead of and behind you as a harmonious setting for the 16-year-olds of the world. When you are 16, adults are slightly impressed and almost intimidated by you. This is a puzzle, finally solved by the realization that they foresee your military future, fighting for them. You do not foresee it. To waste anything in America is immoral. String and tinfoil are treasures. Newspapers are always crowded with strange maps and names of towns, and every few months the earth seems to lurch from its path. When you see something in the newspapers, such as the time Mussolini, who had almost seemed to be one of the eternal leaders, is photographed hanging upside down on a meat hook. So Mussolini was the fascist leader of Italy in World War II, and he got killed and hung upside down on a meat hook pretty brutally. The other stuff he's talking about in here, remember in the time of the war, when the war was happening, there was lots of shortages in America because you needed all that stuff for the war. For example, you all, I think it was the Ford plant, I could be wrong about that, but I think it was the president basically ordered the Ford plant, stop producing cars. You're building tanks for at least the next year. Nothing but tanks. We need lots of tanks to go fight, that's it. No new cars were being built basically. Everything changed for the war. You couldn't get really simple stuff like tinfoil, like things we can buy at the dollar store, because you needed that kind of stuff for the war. So it's always in the background, and it has such a big effect on his life. Talking about being 16, what he means here is the adults look at 16-year-olds and think back then, in a couple of years you're going to be off fighting, and they don't know how to feel about them, about that, because they are still kids, but they're just a few years away from going and doing a very adult thing, which is fighting for your country. So then, long paragraph, I know you all. This is why I tell you guys sometimes about break your writing up into paragraphs. It's hard to read when it's super long like this, I know. We're at the part where it says everyone after meat hook. Everyone listens to news broadcasts 5 or 6 times every day. All pleasurable things, all travel and sports and entertainment and good food and fine clothes are in the very shortest supply. Always were and always will be. There are just tiny fragments of pleasure and luxury in the world, and there is something unpatriotic about enjoying them. All foreign lands are inaccessible except to servicemen. You couldn't leave America and go travel other places. Well, you could, but it was really hard to do. They are vague, distant, and sealed off as though behind a curtain of plastic. The prevailing color of life in America is a dull, dark green called olive drab. That color is always respectable, always important. Most other colors risk being unpatriotic. Olive green is the color of soldiers' uniforms back then. It is this special America, a very untypical one, I guess, an unfamiliar transitional blur in the memories of most people, which is the real America for me. In that short-lived and special country, we spend this summer at Devon when Phineas achieves certain feats as an athlete. In such a period, no one notices or rewards any achievements involving the body unless the result is to kill or save it on the battlefield, so that there are only a few of us to applaud and wonder at what he was able to do. Now we're flashing back again, y'all, to when they were kids. We started off him just kind of thinking about things as an adult. Now back when they were kids again, talking about why Phineas is a great athlete. And he's essentially saying that no one really cared about sports so much back then because all the athletic, tough stuff was going on the battlefield at the time. One day, he, Phineas, broke the school swimming record. He and I were fooling around in the pool near a big bronze plaque marked with events which the school kept records. 50 yards, 100 yards, 220 yards. Under each was a slot with a marker fitted into it, showing the name of the record holder, his year, and his time. Under 100 yards freestyle, there was A. Hopkins Parker, 1940, 53 seconds. A. Hopkins Parker, Finney squinted up at the name. I don't remember any A. Hopkins Parker. He graduated before we got here. You mean that record has been up there the whole time we've been at Devon and no one's busted it yet? It was an insult to the class, and Finney had tremendous loyalty to the class, as he did to any group he belonged to, beginning with him and me and radiating outward past the limits of humanity, towards spirits and clouds and stars. No one else happened to be in the pool. Around us gleamed white tile and glass brick. The green, artificial-looking water rocked gently in the shining basin, releasing vague chemical smells and a sense of many pipes and filters. Even Finney's voice, trapped in this closed, high-ceilinged room, lost its special resonance and blurred into a general well of noise gathered up toward the ceiling. He said blurringly, "I have a feeling I can swim faster than A. Hopkins Parker." We found a stopwatch in the office. He mounted a starting box, the thing that swimmers jump off of, for you non-swimmers, leaned forward from the waist as he had seen racing swimmers do, but never had occasion to do himself. Phineas has never raced for real before you all. He doesn't really know how to jump into the water in the first place. I noticed a preparatory looseness coming into his shoulders and arms, a controlled ease about his stance, which was unexpected in anyone trying to break a record. I said, "On your mark, go!" There was a complex movement when his body uncoiled and shot forward with sudden metallic tension. He planed up the pool, his shoulders dominating the water, while his legs and feet rode so low that I couldn't distinguish them. A wake rippled hurriedly by him, and then at the end of the pool his position broke, he relaxed, dived, in an instant's confusion, and then his suddenly and metallically tense body shot back toward the other end of the pool. Another turn and up the pool again. I noticed no particular slackening of his pace, so he doesn't even slow down, he's not getting tired. Another turn down the pool, his hand touched the end. He looked up at me with a composed, interested expression. "Well, how did I do?" I looked at the watch. He had broken A. Hopkins Parker record by 0.7 seconds. And swimming, you guys, that's a decent amount. Swimming is very, very close. My God, so I really did it. You know what? I thought I was going to do it. It felt as though I had that stopwatch in my head, and I could hear myself going just a little bit faster than A. Hopkins Parker. The worst thing is there weren't any witnesses, and I'm no official timekeeper. I don't think it'll count. Well, of course it won't count. You can try again and break it tomorrow. Tomorrow. We'll get the coach in here and all the official timekeepers, and I'll call up the Devonian, the newspaper, to send a reporter and a photographer. He climbed out of the pool. "I'm not going to do it again," he said quietly. "Of course you are." "No, I just wanted to see if I could do it." "Now I know. But I don't want to do it in public." Some other swimmers drifted in through the door. Finney glanced sharply at them. "By the way," he said in an even more subdued voice, "we aren't going to talk about this. It's just between you and me. Don't say anything about it to anyone." "Not say anything about it? When you broke the school record?" "Shh!" He shot a blazing, agitated glance at me. I stopped and looked him up and down. He didn't look directly back at me. "You're too good to be true," I said after a while. He glanced at me and then said, "Thanks a lot," in a somewhat expressionless voice. Okay. So, sorry, I wanted to get something to drink. Was he trying to impress me or something? Not tell anybody? When he had broken a school record without a day of practice? I knew he was serious about it, so I didn't tell anybody. Perhaps for that reason his accomplishments took root in my mind and grew rapidly in the darkness where I was forced to hide it. So, Phineas is so good, you all, with zero practice at all, he breaks a school record in swimming. He's one of those people that he legitimately can grow up to be a professional athlete, which is unbelievably rare, you all. Unbelievably rare. To be that naturally athletically gifted. And people that are like that, if you've ever seen them in real life or something, like seen them actually do some kind of, athletic thing, it's just, you're kind of stunned. You're just like, that's so incredible. Like, with no effort, they did something that I couldn't even do, even if I practiced every day. That kind of feeling behind it. So Phineas is pretty amazing. Gene's thinking about this and he's confused. Why wouldn't you want to brag to everybody that you broke this record? Well, partly it sounds like Phineas is like a little bit humble in a way, but maybe there's more to it. We'll have to kind of wait and see. All right. So anyway, it says, the Devon school record books contained a mistake, a lie, and nobody knew it but Finney and me. A. Hopkins Parker was living in a fool's paradise wherever he was. His defeated name remained in bronze on the school record plaque, while Finney deliberately evaded an athletic honor. It was true that he had many already. The Winslow Galbraith Memorial Football Trophy for having the most Christian sportsmanship to the game during the 1941-1942 season. The Margaret Duke Bonaventura Ribbon and Prize for the student who conducted himself at hockey most like the way her son had done. The Devon School Contact Sport Award presented each year to that student who, in the opinion of the athletic advisors, excels his fellows in the sportsmanship performance of any game involving bodily contact. Oh my gosh. If you guys can ever make up an award name, remember, keep it short and to the point, like names of most things. Make something too long, nobody wants to hear about it. But these were in the past, and they were prizes, not school records. The sports Finney played officially, football, hockey, baseball, lacrosse, didn't have school records. That's weird. Very different how it is now, you all. To switch to a new sport suddenly, just for a day, and immediately break a record in it, that was about as neat a trick, as dazzling a reversal as I could, to be perfectly honest, possibly imagine. There was something inebriating in the suppleness of this feat. When I thought about it, my head felt a little dizzy, and my stomach began to tingle. It had, in one word, glamour. Absolute schoolboy glamour. When I looked down at that stopwatch and realized a split second before I permitted my face to show it or my voice to announce it that Finney had broken the school record, I'd experienced a feeling that could also be described in one word: shock. To keep silent about this amazing happening deepened the shock for me. It made Finney seem too unusual for not friendship, but too unusual for rivalry. And there were few relationships among us at Devon not based on rivalry. Swimming pools in pools is screwy anyway, he said after a long, unusual silence as we walked toward the dormitory. The only real swimming is in the ocean. Then in the everyday, mediocre tone he used when he was proposing something really outrageous, he added, "Let's go to the beach." Now there's Phineas again. So now we're going to head to the beach here in a second, you all. But first thing to think about, we talked about before in chapter 2 and everything, Gene feels Phineas is his best friend, blah, 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 all that stuff. But Gene also feels a little bit what? And we said it before, you guys just said out loud, hopefully. Didn't feel too weird. He feels jealous. He definitely feels envious of Phineas's athletic prowess. Prowess means skill at something, great skill at something. And the thing is, that's pretty understandable in a lot of ways. Obviously I don't know about girls growing up, you all, but boys growing up, a lot of the stuff you do, you compete against your friends. Who can run the fastest? Who can do the most push-ups? Who can hit the most three-pointers? Who can do this and that, all that kind of stuff. It's usually friendly competition, but it's always there. If you have a friend that just blows you out of the water at something, it's kind of hard to ever really want to play with them in that way anymore, because what's the point? And so he's kind of feeling this little tickle in the back of his brain. And all of us, I think, when people are honest, but I mean all people, pretty much, have somebody in their life they've known before sometime. You've been a little bit envious of them in some way. And that's totally natural, y'all. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just being human. Whatever. It's fine. So, for example, this morning, before it started snowing, I got up early and I went for a run because I like running in the cold. It makes you a really good way to start the day. But now I'm old and I can't run that well anymore and all that kind of stuff. When I was younger in college, I got into running. My assistant coach on my team, he would go running every evening. So after practice, I started going with him, just kind of for the first time running. And we would do 2 or 3 miles and stuff. And I got really into it. And I was doing 5, 10 miles each day on the weekend and everything. Started doing the Louisville half marathon, then eventually the marathon. I eventually did an ultrathon, all that kind of good stuff. Got really into running for a good 10 or so years. When I came back, one of my best friends from high school, when I come back from college in the summer, I got him into running. We go running every day, and we both really enjoyed it. He'd only played basketball. Because our high school was so small, you all, we didn't have cross-country or track or anything like that. We didn't have football, we didn't have a lot of sports. And so we got into running together. We would go do a bunch of races together, and it was really fun. But after about a year and a half, 2 years, he just started really pulling away from me. No matter how much I ran, no matter how good a shape I was in, and this is back when I was a college athlete, I was in super good shape, he was just naturally better than me. And there's nothing I could do about that. I couldn't close that gap between us. He eventually got so good, you all. He was one of the ranked runners in the Louisville Marathon. He got to go to the front of the start up there with the guys from Kenya and stuff like that. Professional Olympic athletes, some of them, like up in the front, and because he was one of the top 10 people. He qualified for Boston Marathon, the famous one, multiple times. And so, yeah, for me, sometimes I would look at him and be like, I wish I could run like that. Like, man, like no matter how much I try, I can't be as good as him. But that's okay. You know, a little bit of envious is okay. You're like, geez, all right, fine. Got to accept it, you know, part of growing up. However, if you're envious of somebody, if you become jealous of somebody, you want that thing and you can't ever have it, that can turn into something nasty in your brain, which is what we should really be careful about. So then it says, the beach was hours away by bicycle, forbidden completely out of all bounds. Going there risked expulsion, destroying the studying I was doing for an important test the next morning. Blasted the reasonable amount of order I wanted to maintain in my life, and also involved the kind of long, labored bicycle ride I hated. All right, I said. Again, Gina's thinking, I shouldn't do this, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because Phineas wants to. All the time. We got our bikes and slipped away from Devon along the back road. Having invited me, Phineas now felt that he had to keep me entertained. He told long, wild stories about his childhood. As I panting up steep hills, he glided along beside me, joking steadily. He analyzed my character and insisted on knowing what I disliked most about him. You're too conventional, I said. He's being sarcastic. He rode backwards with no hands. He rode on his own handlebars. He jumped off and back on his moving bicycle as he had seen trick horseback riders do in the movies. He sang. Despite the steady musical undertone of his speaking voice, Finney couldn't carry a tune, and he couldn't remember the melody or the words to any song. But he loved listening to music, any music, and he liked to sing. We reached the beach late in the afternoon. The tide was high and the surf was heavy. I dived in and rode a couple of waves, but they had reached that stage of power in which you could feel the whole strength of the ocean in them. The second wave, as it tore toward the beach with me, spewed me a little ahead of it, encroaching rapidly. Suddenly it was immeasurably bigger than I was. It rushed me from the control of gravity and took control of me itself. The wave threw me down in a primitive plunge without a bottom, and then there was a bottom, grinding sand, and I skidded onto the shore. The wave hesitated, balanced there, and then hissed back toward the deep water, its tentacles not quite interested enough in me to drag it with me. The wave hissing, the wave trying to drag him back, this and that. That's all what element of poetry, you all? Saying the wave is doing stuff like a person might. So yes, personification. I made my way up on the beach and lay down. Finney came, ceremoniously took my pulse, and then went back into the ocean. He stayed in an hour, breaking off every few minutes to come back to me and talk. The sand was so hot from the all-day sunshine that I had to brush the top layer away in order to lie down on it. And Finney's progress across the beach became a series of high, startled leaps. The ocean, throwing up foaming sun sprays across some nearby rocks, was winter cold. This kind of sunshine and ocean, with the accumulating roar of the surf and the salty, adventurous, flirting wind from the sea, always intoxicated Phineas. He was everywhere. He enjoyed himself hugely. He laughed out loud at passing seagulls, and he did everything he could think of for me. We had dinner at a hot dog stand with our backs to the ocean and its now cooler wind, our faces toward the heat of the cooking range. Then we walked on to the center of the beach, where there was a subdued New England strip of honky-tonks, so honky-tonks are old-style bars, you all. Let's see. The boardwalk lights against the deepening blue sky gained an ideal starry beauty, and the lights from the belts of honky-tonks and shooting galleries and beer gardens gleamed with a quiet purity in the clear twilight. Finney and I went along the boardwalk in our sneakers and white slacks. Finney in his light blue polo shirt, and I in a t-shirt. I noticed that people were looking fixedly at him, so I took a look myself to see why. His skin radiated a reddish copper glow of tan. His brown hair had been a little bleached by the sun, and I noticed that the tan made his eyes shine with a cool blue-green fire. So Finney's a good-looking guy, too, and super athletic, and blah, blah, blah. "Everybody's staring at you," he said suddenly to me. "It's because of that movie star tan you picked up this afternoon, showing off again." Enough broken rules were enough that night. Neither of us suggested going into any of the honky-tonks or beer gardens. We did have one glass of beer each at a fairly respectable-looking bar, convincing, or seeming to convince, the bartender that we were old enough by showing a forged draft card. Fake IDs to get beer, that's a little bit bad. We found a good spot among some sand dunes on the lonely end of the beach, and there we settled down to sleep for the night. The last words of Finney's usual nighttime monologue were, "I hope you're having a pretty good time here. I know I kind of dragged you away at the point of a gun," just an expression, y'all. I kind of made you come here with me. But after all, you can't come to the shore with just anybody, and you can't come by yourself, and at this teenage period in life, the proper person is your best pal." He hesitated, then added, "Which is what you are." And then there was silence on his dune. It was a courageous thing to say. Exposing a sincere emotion nakedly like that in the Devon school was the next thing to suicide. So you can't be too honest with your feeling, you all. If you like your friend, you got to make fun of him. You know, if you like your friend, you got to punch him in the shoulder and stuff like that. You can't just say your feelings. Of course not, boys. I should have told him then that he was my best friend also, and rounded off what he had said. I started to, I nearly did, but something held me back. Perhaps I was stopped by that level of feeling deeper than thought which contains the truth. The end of chapter 3. Okay. Seemed like nothing super duper important happened in chapter 3 other than we learned again what a great athlete Phineas is. Fine. They go to the beach there at the end. Something to think about. Phineas is a very kind of bluntly honest person. "I'm 5'8½". I'm not 5'9". It's his kind of stuff. Why would I lie about that? He goes there with Gene, his best friend, and he kind of just tells him, essentially, he's like, "Yeah, I know I kind of made you come. I know you didn't necessarily want to come to the beach, but I wanted to come here with my best friend, which is you, buddy. Thanks." And Gene almost tells him that he's his best friend too. Almost. But remember, you guys, almost doesn't count. It doesn't mean anything. You either do something or you don't. And so he doesn't. And the last sentence here is really important. "Perhaps I was stopped by that level of feeling, deeper than thought, which contains the truth." In other words, maybe Gene doesn't say, "Yeah, you're my best friend too, Finney," because he's shy. Maybe he doesn't say it because he's not. Because deep down in his heart, where he knows the truth, Gene doesn't consider Phineas his best friend. And that seems like a little minor thing. Okay, it's a bummer. It's kind of sad. Not so important yet, but it will be very soon. So tomorrow I'll put out the stuff on chapter 4, you all. It's a really important chapter. A lot of stuff's going to start to make a lot of sense in chapter 4. And I'll do that probably in like 2 parts of the video. It takes a long time to do this. But anyway, so hopefully you guys are staying warm and enjoying beautiful snow. I hope it's snowing in Louisville too. It's snowing out here. And you all take care, and I'll see you later. Bye.